I never imagined that someone's world could start crumbling right in front of me, and that I'd be the one holding the phone, trying to decide whether to save them or to lose them. But before everything went dark, it all started with something much simpler. A boy who made me laugh, and a feeling that maybe, just maybe, love could be easy this time. I'm 19, and I've always been the careful type when it comes to relationships. I've been burned before. Promises that turned out to be lies. Guys who said forever but meant for now. So when I met him, I wasn't looking for anything serious. He was 17 at the time, a little shy, a little awkward but charming in that way that made me feel seen. He had this crooked smile that came out when he didn't know what else to do with his words, and these quiet eyes that always looked like they were searching for something deeper. We met online, not on a dating app, just in a shared hobby group. We started chatting about music, then about late-night thoughts, and before I realized it, we were talking every day. It felt effortless, safe. He told me he'd been through a lot. His family wasn't the warm, supportive kind. His parents had high expectations, the kind of people who believed success was measured in trophies, test scores, and tuition receipts. He was under constant pressure to be perfect. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone complains about their parents, right? But there was something in his voice when he talked about them. A sort of quiet exhaustion, like he was carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. Still, when we started dating, everything felt new and exciting. We'd talk for hours about our dreams. He'd tell me about his plans for college, the big school he was about to attend, the degree he was chasing, how it was all finally going to pay off. And I'd tell him about my own hopes. I was still figuring out what I wanted out of life, still scared of committing to anything too permanent, because permanence had always meant pain for me. From the start, I tried to be honest about that. I told him, I really like you, but I'm not the kind of person who can promise forever. He'd laugh and say, that's okay, we'll figure it out together. At first, I thought he understood. Over the next few months, things started to shift. He got accepted into his dream college, which was out of state. His parents were thrilled, or maybe just relieved. They paid for everything, tuition, housing, travel. It was a big deal for him. He felt like he was finally earning their approval. But as soon as he started there, something changed. The pressure got worse. He'd text me late at night, saying he couldn't sleep because he was terrified of failing a class. He'd tell me about professors who were harsh, classmates who seemed way ahead of him. I tried to reassure him, telling him everyone struggles at first, but he'd just say, you don't get it. If I fail, I'm done. My parents won't forgive me. I tried to be there. I'd send him encouraging messages, call him when I could. But as time went on, his messages became more anxious, more desperate. Sometimes, I'd wake up to a flood of texts. Long paragraphs about how he felt like a disappointment, how he wasn't sure what the point of anything was anymore. It scared me. I suggested he talk to someone, maybe a counselor, or even just a friend from school. But he always brushed it off. I can't, he'd say. If anyone finds out I'm not okay, I'll lose everything. That's when I started feeling the pressure too. Because slowly, it felt like I was becoming his entire world. If he had a bad day, it was my job to make it better. If his parents yelled at him, I was the one he vented to. If he felt hopeless, I was supposed to give him hope. And I tried. God, I tried so hard. But I'm just one person. There was one night, I'll never forget it, when he said something that hit me like a train. He said, you're the only person who really loves me. If I didn't have you, I don't think I'd be here. It froze me. Because how do you even respond to that? I remember sitting there, my phone glowing in the dark, staring at the message. My chest felt tight. I typed and deleted my reply 3 times. Finally, I said, hey, that's not true. You have people who care about you. Your friends, your teachers. But he just replied, they don't really know me. You do, and that's when I started to feel trapped. Not because I didn't love him. I did. But because I felt like I was carrying the responsibility for his happiness. Like if I ever messed up, if I ever said the wrong thing, the consequences would be something I couldn't take back. Still, I told myself it was fine. He was just emotional. He was under pressure. Everyone says dramatic things when they're stressed, right? I believed that until last week. It started like any other day. He called me after class, sounding quiet but calm. He told me he'd gotten into a fight with his parents. Apparently they found out about a failing grade and they weren't taking it well. They said they're done paying for college, he told me. They said I'm wasting their money. I didn't know what to say. That's a huge blow, especially for someone who built his entire identity around pleasing his parents. I told him, "You can recover from this. You're smart, you'll figure something out." But he just said, "You don't understand. I'm finished. I've lost everything." For the rest of that night, he barely texted back. I thought maybe he just needed space, but the next morning, I woke up to a message that made my blood run cold. It said, "I'm sorry for being a burden. You deserve someone who can make you happy." That was it. No emojis, no punctuation mistakes. Just a flat, terrifying goodbye. I called him immediately. No answer. I texted over and over. Nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I didn't know what to do. His family lived in another state. I didn't have any local contacts. All I knew was that something was seriously wrong. I tried calling his dorm, then campus security, then finally, the non-emergency police line for his city. Explaining the situation was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I kept saying, "I'm his girlfriend. He sent me a message that sounds like he wants to hurt himself. I'm worried." The dispatcher was calm but firm. She asked for his full name, address, and anything I knew about his current state. I told her everything. His stress, his fight with his parents, how isolated he'd been lately. And then I waited. Those next few hours felt like years. I just sat there staring at my phone, terrified that I'd get a call telling me I'd been too late. Eventually, one came. It was the police. They told me they'd gone to check on him and that he was safe, shaken up, but physically okay. I cried so hard I could barely breathe. Relief, guilt, exhaustion, it all hit me at once. But that relief didn't last long, because soon after, his parents found out. And they were furious. Apparently they blamed me. They said I overreacted, that he was just being dramatic, and that I embarrassed their family. I didn't even know how to respond. They were angry that I'd called for help. Angry that their son was now under observation at a local facility. I remember sitting on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, while his mother said, "You had no right to interfere in our family business." But what was I supposed to do? Pretend everything was fine and risk losing him? After that, I couldn't reach him for a few days. His phone was taken away while he was being monitored for his own safety. I didn't know what was happening. Whether he hated me, whether he was okay, whether I'd made things worse. And that's when the guilt really started to sink in, because I kept thinking about everything that led up to that moment. Had I said the wrong thing? Had I been too distant? Had my fear of commitment made him feel unloved? I replayed every conversation, every time I'd told him I don't know what the future holds. Maybe to him that sounded like, "You're not enough." I didn't mean it that way. I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to make promises I wasn't sure I could keep, but maybe honesty wasn't what he needed. Maybe he needed reassurance, and I failed to give it. And now, even though he's safe, I can't shake the feeling that I somehow pushed him closer to that breaking point. That I wasn't enough. That I failed him. And yet, deep down, a small part of me knows that I did the right thing. Because if I hadn't made that call, if I'd just ignored the message, I might have lost him forever. Still, that doesn't make it easier to sleep at night. Because love isn't supposed to feel like fear. And right now, I'm terrified of what comes next. When I made that call, I thought I was doing the right thing, and maybe I was. But nobody ever tells you that doing the right thing can still make you feel like a monster. For the first 24 hours after the welfare check, I didn't sleep. I kept pacing around my room, checking my phone every few minutes, praying for a message, anything, to tell me that he was okay, that he didn't hate me, that he understood why I did it. But my phone stayed silent. Every tick of the clock sounded louder, like it was echoing through my bones. I kept thinking about his last message, the way it sounded final, the way it broke something inside me. And then I'd think about the moment the police told me he was safe, and I'd cry again because yes, he was safe. But our relationship, that was something else entirely. 3 days later, he finally texted, just one line. "They're keeping me here for a bit." I can't talk much. My chest tightened with both relief and guilt. I didn't know what here meant exactly, but I knew it wasn't home. After a few more days, I learned he'd been placed in a mental health facility. Not forever, just until the professionals felt he was ready to go back home. It should have made me feel better. It meant he was safe, monitored, and surrounded by people who actually knew how to help him. But all I could think was, he's in there because of me. His parents made sure I knew it. 2. I got a call from his mother one evening. One of those calls you wish you could unhear. She didn't even say hello. She just started with, "What were you thinking?" I froze. "He's just a kid," she said. "He's been under pressure, yes, but he doesn't need strangers invading our home because you panicked." I tried to explain that I didn't know what else to do, that I was terrified he might hurt himself, that I was only trying to save him, but she wouldn't hear it. "You embarrassed him," she said sharply. "You humiliated our family. He's been through enough, and you made it worse." Her words felt like knives, because part of me agreed with her. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe I should have waited, called him again, given him more time to answer. But another part of me, the rational one, whispered, "If you hadn't acted, he might not be alive right now." I hung up shaking, tears burning down my face, wishing there was some version of this story where everyone got to be okay. The next few weeks blurred together. I tried to go about my life. Classes, work, pretending everything was normal, but it wasn't. Every song, every quiet moment, every time I saw someone holding hands, it reminded me of him. I missed his voice. I missed the way he'd say my name like it was something fragile. I missed the jokes we'd share, the comfort of knowing he was just a call away. But now, every time I thought about reaching out, I froze. What if he didn't want to hear from me? What if he blamed me too? And then the guilt would start all over again. After about 3 weeks, I finally got a message from him. "Hey, I'm out." I remember staring at the screen for a full minute, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd drop my phone. I typed back instantly. "Are you okay? Are you safe? Can we talk?" It took him almost 10 minutes to reply. "I'm okay, I guess. My parents are still mad. They won't talk to me much." I hesitated before typing, "Do you hate me?" His reply came slower this time. "No, I don't hate you. I wish things had gone differently." That line broke me, because I wished that too, more than anything. When we finally talked on the phone, it didn't feel the same. His voice was distant, careful. There was this awkward silence between us that hadn't been there before, like there were invisible walls we couldn't climb over. He told me about what it had been like in the facility, the therapy sessions, the daily check-ins, the moments when he started realizing how bad things had gotten. He said, "They told me I was lucky someone called for help." That line made me stop breathing for a second. "Lucky?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They said a lot of people don't have someone who cares enough to make that call." I wanted to cry, not because of the guilt this time, but because for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't destroyed him. Still, the weight between us didn't lift. He started telling me things I hadn't known, about how long he'd been feeling hopeless, how scared he'd been to fail, how trapped he'd felt by his parents' expectations. I listened to every word, heart in my throat, feeling smaller and smaller, because I realized how much he'd been carrying, and how much I'd missed it. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to help. And that's when something in me broke open. For months, I'd been blaming myself, but listening to him talk about everything, the pressure, the silence, the loneliness, I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about years of expectations, unspoken pain, and the way people hide behind smiles until it's too late. After the call, I sat on my bed for a long time, thinking about everything we'd been through. I thought about the version of him I first met, the boy with the easy laugh and endless curiosity, and then I thought about the version I'd almost lost, the one who thought he didn't matter. I realized something that night. Love isn't about fixing someone. It's about standing beside them while they learn to fix themselves. I couldn't save him, but I could care. I could show up. I could be honest, even when it hurt. Still, the fear never went away completely. Every time my phone buzzed late at night, my stomach twisted with anxiety. Was he okay? Was he spiraling again? Was I strong enough to handle it if he was? Because part of me still felt responsible, like I had to make sure he never reached that dark place again. But deep down, I knew that wasn't fair to either of us. A few weeks after he got home, we finally met in person again. I took a long bus ride to his town, the kind of ride that gives you too much time to think. When I saw him waiting for me at the station, my heart nearly broke. He looked thinner, tired, but his eyes had a kind of softness I hadn't seen in months. When he hugged me, I could feel his heartbeat. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. Then he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." And I just started crying right there, surrounded by strangers, because I finally let myself believe that maybe I hadn't done everything wrong. We spent the whole day together, walking, talking, sitting quietly when words felt too heavy. He told me that his therapy sessions were helping, that he was learning to understand his emotions better, that the doctors had helped him see how his fear of failure had taken control of everything. He also told me that his parents were still distant, but things were slowly improving. When I asked him what he wanted for the future, he said, "I don't know yet, but I know I want to be okay." That answer, it was enough. For the first time in a long time, I saw hope in his face, not because of me, not because of some romantic fantasy, but because he wanted to heal for himself, and that was beautiful. But when the day ended and we said goodbye, I felt a knot in my chest, because I still didn't know what this meant for us. Were we still together? Were we trying again? Or were we just two people who had survived something painful together and didn't know what came next? He didn't define it, and neither did I. We just said, "Let's take it slow," and honestly, that felt right. But later that night, when I got home, the guilt crept in again, because even though he'd thanked me, part of me couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. What if one day, he fell back into that darkness, and this time I wasn't there to help? What if I let him down again? I didn't want to admit it, but part of me was terrified of loving him now, because love, for me, had become tied to fear. Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of being the reason someone breaks. Over the next few weeks, I found myself reflecting more and more, not just on him, but on myself. I realized I had my own walls, my own scars, my own fears about commitment. Maybe that's why I'd been so hesitant to promise him forever. I used to think that being cautious was a strength, that keeping emotional distance would protect me. But now, I saw how it had also protected me from being honest. Not the kind of honesty that says, "I don't know the future," but the kind that says, "Even if I'm scared, I'll still be here with you right now." Because that's what love really is. Choosing to stay present even when the future feels uncertain. That night, I wrote him a letter. Not a long one. Just a few honest lines. "I don't know what will happen between us, but I want you to know that I care, deeply. You matter to me, not because of what you achieve, but because of who you are. I'm proud of how far you've come, and I'll always want the best for you." I didn't expect a reply right away, but he texted me that same night. "Thank you. That means more than you think." And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. When the dust finally settled, it didn't feel like peace. It felt empty. Everyone tells you that after a crisis, things get better, that once the worst has passed, you start to heal. But no one tells you how quiet it gets after the chaos fades. No one tells you that sometimes silence can be the loudest sound in the world. In the weeks after he got out of the facility, I thought life would start to feel normal again, that we'd pick up where we left off. Late-night calls, inside jokes, the comfort of knowing we had each other. But it wasn't that simple. He'd changed, and honestly, so had I. He was calmer now, more aware of his emotions, more open to talking about them. But there was also a certain distance in him, a new kind of carefulness, almost like he was afraid of breaking something fragile. Maybe me, maybe himself, and me. I was walking on eggshells too, every time I texted him. I worried if my words might trigger something. Every time he said he was tired, my stomach twisted, wondering what he really meant. I didn't want to smother him, but I didn't want to lose him either. So I found myself in this strange in-between, half girlfriend, half caretaker, always watching for signs, always second-guessing myself. Love shouldn't feel like tiptoeing through glass, but that's what it had become. He started therapy sessions once a week. He'd tell me bits and pieces about learning coping mechanisms, about trying to set boundaries with his parents. He said it helped. He said it made him feel lighter, and I wanted to be. Happy for him, I was happy for him, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that felt small. Because while he was learning to heal, I was stuck replaying the past, trapped in this endless loop of guilt and fear. I couldn't stop wondering, did I make things worse? Did I overstep by calling for help? Did I betray his trust? Every time he said, "I'm doing better," a part of me wanted to ask, because of me or in spite of me? Then one night, a few weeks later, we finally talked about it. Not just the surface level stuff, but the real heavy part. We were on the phone, both quiet for a long time, when he suddenly said, "You know, I was angry at you at first." My heart dropped, but I didn't interrupt. "I thought you'd given up on me," he continued. When I realized the police were at my door, I felt betrayed, like you'd chosen everyone else over me. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't risk losing you. There was silence on the line. Then softly he said, "I know. I see that now. You did what I needed, not what I wanted." Those words, what I needed, not what I wanted, hit me deeper than anything else he'd ever said. Because that's exactly what it was. I hadn't been the perfect girlfriend. I'd been the scared, desperate one who made the hardest choice. And somehow, that had been the right one. After that night, something shifted between us. The tension eased. We still had our quiet moments, our awkward pauses. But there was understanding there now, a kind of unspoken forgiveness that didn't need to be spelled out. He started talking more openly about his family. Apparently, after everything that happened, his parents were forced to face their own behavior. They didn't suddenly turn loving and gentle, but they started to listen more. They even agreed to attend a few family counseling sessions with him. He told me it wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and honestly, that was enough. As for me, I began to notice how much the experience had changed my perspective too. Before all this, I'd been afraid of commitment, terrified of promising forever to anyone. I used to think distance kept me safe. But now I realized that being emotionally distant didn't protect me. It just made me lonely. Love, real love, wasn't about knowing the future. It was about showing up, even when the present was uncertain. It was about being brave enough to care, even when caring hurt. That realization didn't make me fearless overnight, but it made me try. We started rebuilding slowly. Instead of long, dramatic conversations, we went back to basics: morning texts, casual video calls, sending memes and music. It felt almost childish at first, like we were relearning how to just be with each other. But maybe that's exactly what we needed. One day, he sent me a playlist titled "Getting Better." It was full of songs about healing, growing, forgiving. At the end, he added one of our old favorites, the one we used to listen to when things were good. When I texted him about it, he said, "I put that one there because I want to remember who I was before everything got dark. I want to find that version of me again." I didn't tell him then, but I cried after reading that, not out of sadness, but pride, because I realized he was finally fighting for himself, and that's something no one else could have done for him. But recovery isn't a straight line. There were days when he sounded cheerful and motivated, and others when he'd text me short, clipped replies. I learned not to panic every time he went quiet, to trust that silence didn't always mean danger. That was hard, but it was necessary. Because I wasn't his savior. I was his partner, and there's a difference. One night, while we were talking about his progress, he said something I'll never forget. "You know, I used to think love meant someone fixing you, but now I think it just means having someone to hold your hand while you fix yourself." I smiled, even though tears were already running down my face, because that was it. That was the lesson we both had to learn. Months passed, and the heaviness started to lift. He was focusing on his studies again, slowly rebuilding his confidence. His parents were still tough, but less controlling. And as for us, we were somewhere between young love and quiet companionship. We weren't talking about marriage, or forever, or making promises we couldn't keep. We were just taking it one day at a time, and that felt peaceful. Sometimes he'd still tell me, "You're the reason I'm still here," and I'd correct him every time. "No," I'd say, "you're the reason. I just made a call." He'd smile and say, "Yeah, but you made it." One day, he showed me something from his therapy sessions. It was a letter he'd written to his younger self. The first line said, "You're doing your best, and that's enough." I read it and felt this deep ache in my chest, the kind that comes from recognizing someone's pain and progress all at once. He asked if I wanted to write one too, just as an exercise, so I did. Mine said, "You did what you could. You made mistakes, but you cared. And caring, even when it hurts, is never wrong." That letter became something of a turning point for me. It was the first time I'd truly forgiven myself. As time went on, our relationship began to evolve naturally. We were still close, still affectionate, but there was also a new maturity between us. An understanding that love doesn't always have to be intense or dramatic to be real. Sometimes it's just quiet, support. Sometimes it's space. Sometimes it's the courage to let someone heal without making their healing your responsibility. I think both of us were finally learning that. One evening, we went for a walk. The first time we'd seen each other in person again since everything happened months earlier. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. He looked better, healthier, lighter. We walked for a while without saying much, and then he turned to me and said, "You know, I don't think you ever really understood what you did for me." I looked at him, confused. "You didn't just save me that night," he continued. "You showed me that people don't have to give up on you when things get hard. You showed me that I'm worth staying for." I didn't know what to say. Tears stung my eyes, but this time, they weren't from guilt. They were from something warmer. "You were always worth it," I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it too. That night when I got home, I thought about everything we'd been through. The fear, the guilt, the chaos, and the slow, steady healing that followed. It had been messy, painful, exhausting, but it had also been real. We'd both learned what it meant to love someone through the hardest chapters. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but honestly. And maybe that's what love really is. Not the grand gestures or fairy tale promises, just the simple, stubborn choice to care, even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even after the storm.